Hey, what's up, fellas? Hopefully your Friday's off to an awesome start. We just laid down some fat stacks of cash, and fat stacks, I mean, nothing even close to what you would actually consider a fat stack, but we just laid some nice money down. Jack Flaherty over Brent Suter on the overlay matchup shop. We're here to talk DK NBA, but if you haven't been playing on the matchup shop yet, this is going to be the new big thing. I tell you, like, we got a dozen people to start playing on it the last 2 days, and now all I get is messages on it all day long.
Yeah, same. It's awesome. And it seems like every time I place a decent sized wager right after the line moves, which is always nice to see.
All right, guys. So the name of the website's Overlay DFS. Go give it a check out. The matchup shop is legit. We're here to do a real quick rundown of how we think this game will work out tonight for Miami at Boston. Miami at Boston. I'm just reading it off of Draftkings. Y'all know this is the bubble. Who do you think wins this game?
Probably Boston, but I mean, listen, like these games have been close. Miami's found a way to be up 3-1. I think that they could put it away in a close game. I think more than likely Boston takes it to a game 6.
I think there's an opportunity here for one team to roll, and it's not the team that I'm a big fan of. That's the Miami Heat. I could definitely see Boston winning this one by double digits. Like, I don't think Miami's gonna, not gonna lose by 30, but Boston has more talents. I think you've been banking on the talent all series. We haven't seen it come through, but Miami's won 3 close games. You know what I mean? Like, they're winning by the skin of their teeth because they play well together. But I won't argue a single point you've made about Boston being the more talented team. I think they obviously are.
Yeah, they're the more talented team. Although I don't know if you can say so obviously anymore now that Miami's up 3-1 and a guy like HERRO is emerging, man. I remember a couple months ago I was saying that guys were comparing him to like Devin Booker, and I wasn't quite sure. Man, his score, he's awesome.
His game does remind me of Booker a little bit. Like, he's a good 3-point shooter, but he's not just a 3-point shooter. He cuts to the basket. He's got the mid-range game. You trust him in the biggest moments. I like this kid a lot. But we're here to talk DK and kind of go through lineup construction with you guys. The centerpiece of my lineup tonight is going to be Jason Tatum. He had a terrible first half last time out. And he still had his rebounds and his peripherals and stuff like that, but he was like 0 of 8 from the field. He killed it after that. I expect him to be assertive and aggressive tonight. I want to do my best to get him in the captain spot this evening if I can.
It makes a lot of sense. He's Boston's best player, and sounds like you kind of expect Boston to win here, if not win handily.
This is the first game I've expected them to win in the series.
I get it.
And I also, out of all of Miami's big money players, I still will take Bam over Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, he's very capable of having a big game, right? But Bam is the mismatch for Boston. We pointed it out last time around here. It hasn't changed. He didn't do anything special in game 4 that he can't completely replicate tonight. He rebounds, he passes, he blocks shots, he steals, he scores, he does it all.
Yeah, he's wildly in play, man. I get it. It sounds to me like do you even want to use like do you think Bam's a lock for you here?
I do think Bam's a lot because as much as I think Boston can win by double digits, I don't think Miami's thrown in the towel. Like, Miami starters are out there, in my opinion, the whole game. And if they're out, it's the last minute or two. It's nothing more than that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
They don't lie down.
I don't think much has changed from like a game theory perspective on this game than the previous 4.
I think where you're going to want to get off people is I had very little to zero interest in anybody cheap from Boston. Grant Williams is no longer a thing. We featured him on the matchup shop today. No, thank you. Wanamaker sees hardly any minutes. We did see them go back to Robert Williams, as I told you was a distinct possibility last game, and why I ultimately decided not to use Enes Kanter. I would use Williams today if I were to use a cheap center, but honestly, I think they might go small more than anything. I think Hayward plays 30 minutes plus today. I have very little interest in any of their small pieces. And if you like their cheaper guys on their shallow rotation day in a closeout game like this, you almost start assuming that that's a little bit of a point discrepancy.
Yeah, I'm with that.
So the one guy I have a question on that's cheap that I think you could possibly see, maybe get too much ownership today because the last game would be Andre Iguodala.
I agree.
So he's had some back spasm issues. And last game was the first game that he really played a lot of minutes. Jay Crowder had a bad game, and he kind of took Crowder's role in the fourth quarter. I'll be completely transparent. I don't know what they're going to do with him today. I get making the bet. I get making the fade. We've watched teams go all over with their distribution of how their players play in this series and the other one. There's no real reason here because honestly, Coach Spo at 1:44 Central Time probably doesn't know how he's going to use him tonight either.
Yeah, I agree. I think you'd be hard pressed to get a good answer on that. I'm 100% with you there. I think IGUODALA is fine, but I hardly think he's a must. It doesn't look like he's getting a ton of love, so I don't think you fade him because of ownership. But I don't think you play him in cash games if you're playing cash games because of ownership here.
No, because after I play these two guys and you play around with roster construction, I think you almost have to go with a Duncan Robinson or
And
Daniel Theis.
okay, so just for your, I don't know how often, how frequent you play cash games compared to GPPs on these slates, but it looks like Tatum and Bam are the two highest owned players on the slate by a good amount, which makes sense. You love them. I mean, that's no surprise.
Yeah, I would have assumed that. Yep.
Then it's Crowder and Tease. And Robinson is much lower owned than Tease.
Okay. And that all comes into lineup construction because I used Tatum at the captain spot the other day. He was popular. He was popular overall. He was popular in the captain spot. And that's where Crowder and Theis, come into helping you build your lineup because he will be popular again right there. I want to point out at the end of the series last time out, you saw Theis playing a lot of minutes until he fouled out in the final game 7 against Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, they're just are no cheap guys that are really in play on the slate. They aren't getting any ownership. So that's why it's all concentrated on Crowder and Theis.
And Crowder has been 3 of 19 and 3 of 17 from 3 the last 2 games. If you want to jump off of him and think that continues, good move. I will say before last game, he had been as consistent as any player in the bubble, not named Eric Gordon.
Yes, I don't think that it's crazy to fade him, though.
No, not at all, because it does help with roster construction, and then you line yourself up right here. Like if you go with Gordon Hayward, you're not going to quite get to Tyler HERRO, but you're going to get to Marcus Smart. And HERRO got a price bump because he deserved it. He went up $1,200 from last game. And look, I love Tyler HERRO. I think this kid's a baller. He's from Wisconsin. Everybody likes Tyler HERRO right now. But he's not scoring 37 real-life points again tonight.
It's hard to want to pay $8K for him. I'm with you.
So I think tonight's an appropriate time to jump off him. The flip side of that is I think a lot of people will agree with that. He wasn't even that popular last game. He's the reason I finished in the money.
I think he's the guy that comes in 15 to 20% owned on this slate. Don't you agree?
We talked about this on baseball at the Red Sox today. The DFS public, y'all listening to this and everybody else playing, you guys are pretty smart these days. There's 8 million people like us out there breaking these things down. And now your average DFS player is pretty smart. And I think most people won't be point chasing Tyler HERRO.
Yeah, and the other thing is, agreed. We talk about this all the time, and we don't know how many people are out there using optimizers and stuff, but he's not an optimizer type play.
Gotcha. I'm with you on that one. So I would say this kind of makes sense from a roster construction point. I expect Hayward, who's appropriate at his price, hasn't done anything special the first 2 games. He's going to play at least 30 minutes tonight unless there's some sort of major point discrepancy, which you can't count on. I think he's a solid piece. I think Marcus Smart is solid. I don't love rostering Theis, but it makes roster construction significantly easier. And as you mentioned, in GPPs, if you want to pivot down to Robinson, he's an upside type of play with his ability to hit the 3. He's also a riskier play because if he doesn't hit 3s, he doesn't do anything. So I think he'd be more appropriate for GPPs, and at which point you could jump off of one of these guys, maybe even go down from Crowder and go with Theis. And you could go with maybe a little bit of a different build, like Dragic Crowder. I think Dragic is a guy who probably doesn't get a ton of love either, appropriately.
I think Dragic and Jaylen Brown don't get a ton of love.
Because they're in that dead zone, right?
Yes, because Kemba and Butler will get love, in my opinion.
Ooh, you think people will play Kemba and overpay for him?
More so than Jaylen Brown and...
Because Brown's only $400 more.
I do. I think that Kemba will be higher owned than Brown.
Interesting. Well, then Brown's definitely the better player then.
Hey, you've been high on Brown.
Well, I mean, from a DFS perspective, he just outplays Kemba almost every single game. He gets a lot more peripherals.
Yes, he does.
So Kemba's he's a very likable guy, but the playoffs are a little tougher for him because it is difficult to be a superstar when you're 5'11" or however tall he is.
Well, also, like, he's not the only guy that's, looking to score on his team anymore.
Exactly. So I think if it were me, I would be very similar to the build that we talked about, where Crowder, Hayward, Smart, and Thies. I like the idea of Duncan Robinson. He could easily outscore Thies. But if you're looking for a baseline of points, even though Thies has not been great in this series, he's probably been more consistently okay than Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, sure.
And if you think Miami plays really well and you want a few extra bucks for cap room, I mean, you can pivot, go up to Bam potentially in the captain spot over Tatum. I prefer Tatum, but Bam does give you extra money. Like if you really like Jaylen Brown, Robinson, Thies, Crowder, like you could do that.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know. I prefer Tatum in the captain spot, though.
I get it. I think a lot of people will.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly what the percentage was I had him in last time out, but I swear it was 30 or 40% he was in the captain.
Yeah, he's projected to be by far the highest captain owned here.
Okay, so
it makes sense because he's the best player on the slate, and it's not really hard to fit him in. I mean, so why wouldn't he be?
Right, these guys, these Smarts and Heroes and Haywards and stuff, these guys are just as reliable on a points per dollar basis as the Butlers, Browns, and Kembas. It's just they're lower money. So by putting Tatum in there, he's a guy, even at his price, he's very capable of providing upside on the Spurs.
No doubt.
So that's what I would do.
I get it. I'm not really a huge Showdown player, and I don't play cash games, so I'll leave you to it.
Gotcha. Is there any guy that you would like from a GPP perspective tonight that you feel like, if you were trying to be different, is there any specific person you want to take a look at?
I mean, honestly, like Brown and Hero, it's hard to want to spend 8K on Hero, but I think Brown comes in like much lower owned than all the other good players on the slate.
He's in that dead man zone, like you talked about, with Tatum taking up a lot of that captain usage and Bam being so reliable. Or maybe Miami just isn't good tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, they're due for a clunker. I love the way they play together, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Boston win by 15 tonight, 20. And maybe you don't play Bam. Maybe you play Brown over Bam.
Yeah, you play like 3 or 4. You can only play like one piece of Miami, and maybe it's like a bench piece, like we've been doing like an MPJ for Denver. Not exactly the same, but you know what I mean.
Definitely. So, all right, guys, good luck tonight.
Thank you.